All right, so I want to talk about Mare Chaos, and more specifically, actually, I want to talk about damage multipliers, how they work in trails, and why a lot of players, I think, overvalue stuff like the 40% extra damage that Mare Chaos purportedly provides you. The problem with this is in practice, it's actually way weaker than you might realize. So the big issue here is that in trails, damage multipliers simply add together. For example, and this actually includes critical hits. Critical hits allow your hit to do plus 50% damage. So if you critically hit while under the effects of the plus 40% from Mare Chaos, your damage goes from the plus 150, the 150% base from the crit to 190%. But in the Calvard games in particular, you have hit count, which is always giving you a pretty sizable damage multiplier, particularly if you're using it very well. So let's take, for example, a late game scenario that I think is fairly easy to set up and optimize for. Let's say you have 50 hits racked up. That's plus 100% damage. And you have a very high crit rate. And you critically hit with the Hadron or Kusanagi quartz, which make your critical hits do plus 100% more damage than they would normally. So it's plus 150 instead of plus 50. In this scenario, your standard damage 100% goes up to 200% with the 50 hits, and the critical hit with Kusanagi or Hadron brings that up to 350%. So from here, if you were to activate your boost for Mare Chaos, it brings your damage from 350% to 390%. This is much, much less than a 40% increase. This is also why I'm not huge on shard commands or brave orders that increase damage. In the previously discussed example, where Mare Chaos takes your damage from 350% to 390%, like that's only an 11.4% increase in damage in practice. And you can even push your damage multiplier higher than 350% before considering Mare Chaos 2. So, with all that in mind, this is a big reason why I'm not big on it, right? And it also competes with other options that increase your strength or your ATS and your speed or just things that do something else. Because increasing your strength is not subject to the same sort of damage multiplier shenanigans that Mare Chaos is. In games where in Trails games where you have a lot of damage multipliers at your disposal, any individual one becomes less important. So going all in on a boost that gives you a damage multiplier and not a whole lot else is just not that appealing when you can get your damage multipliers from other sources. Now, the thing is, the damage multiplier from Mare Chaos might theoretically be more useful early on in the game before your team is as established and has access to Hadron, Kusanagi, whatever else. The problem is, of course, that you don't start the game with Mare Chaos. You need to unlock it. And by the time you actually get it, there's a good chance that the potential window of usefulness for this kind of damage multiplier is just gone. And everything that I'm saying here about the damage multiplier regarding Mare Chaos also applies to many of the unique buffs that are present in Trails Beyond the Horizon. This being, I guess, mild spoiler warning or whatever if you haven't played that game. Spirit Unification, the Stigma buffs, those kinds of things. Because the Spirit Unification is just plus 50%, everything I said about the earlier examples applies here too. If you're running 350% damage, going from 350 to 400 is not that big of a buff. It is certainly not something that I would consider to be worth 100 craft points, unless something else was, unless there was some kind of huge other benefit you're getting from spirit unification, which, I mean, case by case basis, but I would generally say is not very present. Now, when compared to the boost from regular Mare, and if I have not clarified yet, I'm talking about all of these comparisons in the context of Daybreak 2 and Beyond the Horizon. In Daybreak 1, these work differently, and Mare Chaos is a lot better there. But both regular Mare and Mare Chaos do 80% more damage versus stunned foes. So this stat is a wash. Mare Chaos has 60% reduced S-Craft delay. What this essentially means is that when using S-Crafts, you get a speed boost of 66.6 repeating percent. Alternatively, regular Mare has 42% speed always. I would much rather have 42% speed always rather than just 66.6% when S-crafting. And in addition to that, regular Mare also gives you regen, accuracy, strength and ATS up, which again is not subject to the same damage multiplier issues. It also gives you increased defense and ADF. Granted, those stats have not been super good since back in the original Sky trilogy, honestly, but it's still something, as opposed to what you get out of Mare Chaos, which, I mean, I've already kind of gone into why the damage multiplier on this is way less powerful than it appears on paper, but yeah. Now, the last stat to really talk about on Mare Chaos is the added critical hit rate. And this one is both sort of the best and worst stat on Mare Chaos, depending on what sort of other resources you as the player have. The Kusanagi and Hadron quartz that you can equip that make your critical hits stronger are really, really, really good. So if Mare Chaos is pumping your critical hit rate up to a very high rate, then this has a lot of appeal to it. The problem is you can get that critical hit rate elsewhere. Depending on the game, it's easier or harder than the other, but in Daybreak 2, the player has access to the Proverbs of Divinity. These grant 20 critical hit rate, 10 speed, and 100 accuracy, and can be upgraded to the True Proverbs of Divinity, which give 50% more of all of these things. And I consider this the best accessory in the game, and most characters should be running 2 of them. And with 2 True Proverbs of Divinity, you will have plus 60% critical hit rate just from that. If you run a Strike 3, that brings you up to 84. At this point, assuming you have this, then you only need 16 more to reach 100%, which you can get from, well, each character has their own starting critical hit rate of a little bit, which varies from character to character. And in Van's case in particular, you can just use regular Mare, which gives 20 critical hit rate right there, and you're already at 100%. Now, this of course depends on if you have True Proverbs of Divinity. This requires you to be hunting those accessories all game, even though they're available relatively mid-game in Daybreak 2. You might have not been purchasing a bunch of these for all of your characters if you were not planning for it, even though it is a very, very good idea, in my opinion, to pool your resources into this accessory. Uh, so if your critical hit rate is lower or you're struggling to raise it up, you can also use, by the way, Zodiac Sign to boost your critical hit rate in Daybreak 2. I believe it is a 50% buff to your critical hit rate. But yeah, it really depends a lot on whether your accessory game is up to snuff. If you are playing, I guess, what I would call properly, more or less, then you'll have these accessories and you will not need to worry about additional critical hit rate from Mare Chaos. But if you don't have it, then Mare Chaos might be more appealing to you. In Trails Beyond the Horizon, the accessory game is a bit more varied in what you might want to go for. There is not as much of a clear best option, and even preferable options you might want to go for do not necessarily also give critical hit rate. So in here, there's a bit more reason to maybe consider gunning for Mare Chaos just to bump up your crit rate more. I still find this a little bit questionable because you can still late game equip Esmalus Gem, Strike 3, and Strike 2 and still have quite a lot of critical hit rate. But Mare Chaos does make a better case for use in this game. But once again, just to like summarize the whole thing, the reason for that is not because of the damage multiplier it offers. It's because of the critical hit rate if you are running Kusanagi or yeah, Kusanagi in the case of Daybreak 3, or Horizon rather. And if you're not running Kusanagi, then I extremely do not recommend Mare Chaos at all. Like, it really depends on whether or not you're running Kusanagi in Daybreak or, excuse me, in Horizon or Hadron in Daybreak 2. And if you're not running those, then forget about it. Don't even bother considering Mare Chaos. So, in conclusion, damage multipliers are often far weaker than they appear on paper. So, don't get suckered into using them too much when they might not be providing anywhere near as much benefit as you might think that they do.